We were victims of the Eaton Canyon wildfire. We lost our house and landed myself in the hospital with adrenal failure. We just continue to do more and more and more and more and more of the same thing. My body told me we were done. You have an electric fence you've created around your future. One of the reasons I ran to addiction, I wanted to feel like I was in control. One of the loneliest moments, Nick, in a leader's life is getting everything that he or she thought was going to make them happy and then find out it doesn't work.
Welcome back to another episode of Limitless. I'm very excited today because we have Joseph Barkley with us, and he is the coach and the president of the Meta Performance Institute. Joseph is with us to talk about how success can quietly create limits. Joseph, a warm welcome to you. How are you?
Oh, I'm excited to be here, Nick. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm very excited to have you too. I'm very much looking forward to dig into the question about how success can quietly create limits and also hopefully uncover how we can break beyond them. So, Joseph, just before we get into the conversation, a brief introduction to yourself, please.
Absolutely. I am born and raised in Southern California. So I'm in Los Angeles as we're talking right now, Nick. And I grew up in a family of high performers. And then I got married, had a couple of kids, started a few companies, and landed myself in the hospital with adrenal failure. And I still wanted to make a big impact in the world, but knew that I couldn't do it the same way I was always doing it. So I first hired a coach, and I continue to have a coach to this day. There is not an area of my life that's not impacted. So now that I have the privilege of not only getting to coach other leaders in the world, but also train up other coaches, it comes from a place of personal experience, not just wanting to, sell a service product. So it's changed my life. It's helped me in the highest of highs. It's helped me in the lowest of lows. Just this last year, many of your listeners might know, we were victims of the Eaton Canyon wildfire. We lost our house in the wildfire just this last year. And it's the same tools that have helped me reach the pinnacle of so far of success that also helped me find a lot of resource in the lowest of lows. So I care deeply about this work.
Thank you, Joseph, for sharing. Thanks for your vulnerability and for being so honest and sharing. And I think that says something about you as a leader. You faced adversity, and I'm sorry about your hospital.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about losing your house as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And in some ways, I'm grateful for it. I'm sure you've gone through a lot of challenges in your life. I look back, and because of the choices I made afterwards, in some strange way, it's a gift. It can become a gift. So I'm also thankful for it, and I wouldn't want to do it over again.
And maybe you can take us back to that when you were there and found yourself in hospital. What was it leading up to that really broke you? Because as we talked about, success can quietly break us. But was it then really, if you were to pinpoint, what's the reason for that?
Yeah, I think that frankly, probably a lot of your listeners, one of our biggest challenges is that we are kind of good at things. And we are rewarded for being kind of good at things. And then we continue to do those same things. And we have not necessarily discovered a new way of creating impact and maybe income in the world or creating relationships in the world. So we just continue to do more and more and more and more and more of the same thing that we were rewarded for. And it becomes a bit of a hamster wheel, that we're just going to continue telling the same story and grinding out, 10% more, 20% more, 30% more the next year until maybe, and hopefully I can help your listeners avoid this, but maybe at some point we really reach the limits of what we can do by ourselves and the way that we were used to getting great things done in the world. And at least in my case, my body told me we were done. We couldn't keep trying to get success the way we used to get success. There was a limit to that. Which is terrifying because when you have to think about a whole new way of doing something, you feel like, I now risk losing everything that I created? And that can be a scary moment for a lot of us.
Yeah, we all have our stories indeed. I have my own rock bottom as well, as many of the
Yeah.
listeners would know. And but it's about what you say, that it's about owning them and see how can we then turn them around to something positive. So we make it a surrender moment and a restart instead. And that's where I then want to elaborate with you, Joseph. How can past success then become a ceiling instead of the foundation for something new?
Yeah, I think that past success can be extremely resourceful because we do have some available information. We have some information around what have we done that was valuable to other people. And maybe it got you a job, or it got you promoted, or it got you new clients, or you launched a new business, or you invented a new product and it was valuable for people. So it's not useless. And the first place that your brain is going to go to imagine your next level is going to go to past information it already has. It's the easiest thing for your brain to focus on. It's going to focus on past success, past moments where you felt like you were winning, and when we imagine the next level of our success, it takes a little bit of re-engineering of how we think to try and imagine not only just doing more, but doing it differently. So just notice that at first, as if you're thinking about, gosh, what if I was to 4x or 10x or 100x my results this next year and not burn up my life, or not get a divorce, or not become unhealthy? I can't do that by just putting in another extra couple of hours of work this week, or working a little bit harder, or working a little bit faster. I have to work differently. And the first moments of that are going to feel kind of like an identity crisis, because you have already put in some hours feeling like you're an expert doing something. And at least at first, nobody really wants to feel like they're a beginner all over again. I don't want to feel like I'm just now learning something for the first time, at least at first. At some point, it becomes really exciting, because beginners are also, there's another way of thinking about that. It's not like you're beginning something. It's like it's a new adventure. But if the first thought you have is like, I don't know anything, or I'm a beginner, that can feel kind of demoralizing at first. So that's often what gets in our way at the beginning.
And what do you see then when it comes to leaders who perhaps perceive that they have some intuitive fences that they don't even realize perhaps that they're there? There might be some blockers that they are invisible to because it becomes so habitual in their life.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you asking that, Nick. We have a tool in meta performance coaching that we call the intuitive fence, and everybody has one. You have one, I have one, all of your audience has an intuitive fence. And what we mean by that is, if I was to ask you today to predict your results next year, your intuition will make a prediction. You might call it a projection. You might call it what's reasonable. I hear that word a lot from clients. Well, it's reasonable to predict 10% growth this next year. And all that is like an estimation that your brain is making. You can call it your gut. That's what we call it in the States a lot. Like, my gut tells me that this is what I can expect this next year. And the first step to really creating transformative results for leaders is to first notice that they have that fence to begin with. You have an electric fence you've created around your future, and you call it your intuition, you call it projections, you call it being reasonable. Everything inside that fence feels like feels reasonable, feels like it's achievable. And then you imagine there's a whole set of things outside of this electric fence, and you don't even consider them. Some of the things you don't even imagine in the first place, because it's so outside of what you think is possible that your brain doesn't even want to imagine it, not at first. And so the first step is just noticing you have a fence. You have this intuitive fence that success has trained you to keep in place. And I would invite your listeners to first just consider that what they thought was reasonable about their future is just their imagination. And it's not at all based in reality. Because the future that you're thinking about, none of us have lived there yet. So we're trying to make predictions about something we've never experienced. So that's where some of those intuitive fences can kind of get in our way.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you talk about imagination there and thinking about the future scenarios and so on. And why do then high performers often become less imaginative as they become more successful? We see that in professional, but we also see it in sports stars and so on. Is it that we lack the hunger then, or what happens?
Well, I think honestly, Nick, it's because we have stopped growing in a certain kind of intelligence that we used to have when we were kids. You know, when you succeed in business, you succeed in. We coach a lot of professional athletes, and they've become brilliant at throwing a ball, running a play, moving a puck around an ice rink. They're brilliant at that. So they have intelligence in athletics. They have business intelligence. They have leadership intelligence. But one of the things that has been probably getting weaker as we become grown-ups is our imaginative intelligence. When we were little kids, we could imagine being superheroes and conquering the world and slaying dragons. And we didn't second guess ourselves because our brain didn't see any limits. I love the name of your podcast, Limitless. Like, what if there truly are no limits at all? But then we experience some life, and we experience some disappointments, and we get some feedback, and we experience criticism, and those things are painful, they're tough. And so then what we've sort of trained ourselves is to stop imagining what's possible, because it just means potentially failure. It means heartbreak. It means pain. Well, one of the problems with that, of course, is that now we start to choose things that feel like they are predictable and reliable for our success, and stop imagining things that are possible. And so we become really, really comfortable with things that we know we are right about. And instead, when we go into the world of imagination, we might paint a picture of the future that's going to mean you're going to try some things, you're going to experiment, it's going to be messy, you're not going to know what you're doing most of the time, you're going to feel like a beginner most of the time. But that's how all of the best results happen, is by starting with imagining a future that could be, and maybe even you think should be, and then beginning to make choices that could create that possibility. So it really does come back to a discipline of flexing and exercising a different muscle again, and that's your imaginative intelligence.
Absolutely love that. Training your muscles so you can be more creative and imagine again. And I work with many leaders, and I'm sure you do as well, who almost define themselves not only in the success, but in their work. They live the company, the values, and so on. And how does then identity get attached to success? And why do you think this can become dangerous for leaders?
I think identity becomes attached to success because our identity is attached to results. And I see this pattern in my life and in the lives of so many leaders, where we tell ourselves, if I do the right things, then I'm going to get the right things, and then finally I will feel confident. Finally I'll feel free. Finally I will feel accomplished. And unfortunately what we've done is we've attached feeling free, confident, mature, accomplished, we've attached that to a result that we may or may not ever get. So if we try some things and we don't get that result right away, well, unfortunately we miss out on feeling free, confident, accomplished. Well, what if we start with, you are already free right now, before you've accomplished one more thing? I want your listeners to really think about this. What if you are already free? What if you are already courageous? What if you are already valuable? What if you already are generous and loving? What if you are already, you are not alone? What if that's already true? That's who you are. And then let's do some experiments. And sometimes the experiments will work and sometimes they won't, but it will not change who you are. And that then, Nick, becomes an unending resource of energy, creativity, courage. I'm going to keep trying things, and I'm going to keep experimenting, and I'm going to keep growing, because it never had anything to do with who I actually am. I will always be free. I will always be loved. I will always be valuable, even if sometimes my experiments don't work out. And that's a beautiful way to live life.
Yeah, absolutely. You make me inspired here. And indeed, that is the limitless mindset that we are talking about here. But let me challenge that a little bit, Joseph. There's so much disruptions out there. It's the geopolitical situation. There's mergers, disruptions. There's burnout. There's crisis. And as I'm speaking about, also there's a lot of addictions. People are falling to bad coping mechanisms and so on. Why do then previously successful leaders struggle more than expected?
Yeah, I think that. Are you asking why do we still have addictions if we're succeeding?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Well, as somebody I'm 18 years sober myself, and I realized that one of the reasons I ran to addiction in the first place was not just because I felt better when I was using. That was part of it. But what was really happening there was I wanted to feel like I was in control. And my addiction was something that I felt like I could control. I can choose when I will feel good. And when I realized that my life, my marriage, my success, my bank account didn't always give me a feeling of happiness or peace, because again, my identity was attached to the achievement, my accomplishment. And when it didn't work, I wanted to control my emotional experience. And so I chose addiction as a way, for a while, as a way of feeling like I could manage, I could control my experience of life. One of the loneliest moments, Nick, in a leader's life is getting everything that he or she thought was going to make them happy and then find out it doesn't work. That's a lonely moment. And so sometimes success can be really, can be a sad moment when people stand up on that stage and they get that award. I've talked to Oscar-winning actors and filmmakers. I have talked to 2-time Stanley Cup winners in hockey. I've talked to people who've achieved. I've talked to some of the most famous people in the world. And every single one of them will tell you that one of the loneliest moments in their lives is when they got the achievement that they thought was going to solve all their problems. And when it doesn't, where do you go? And so I don't blame people for then becoming violent, becoming isolated, becoming addicted to something, because they don't feel like they have anything else. They have nowhere else to go to feel human and to feel whole. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're sharing, Joseph. I work with many high achievers also who are struggling with addictions. It can be all kind of addictions. I'm 7 years sober myself from alcohol.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But it seems like, we all pick something. Many leaders I'm working with can be other things. Many women I'm working with, high achievers, it can be spending too much time shopping online and so on, or social media scrolling, or whatever else it will be. But it seems like it is that lack of control in our life about events that's externally, but at least we can control our addiction. So I want to pick into that, Joseph, because I think there's something right there. Because if we don't remove our dark side, so we address it, we take ownership for it, and we deal with our addictions, then they could easily make us hit that rock bottom or burnout or something else. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit of the work you do to help leaders to take ownership and work on the dark side of themselves.
Yeah, Nick, I love that, and I'll speak concisely, and then I'll let your listeners know where they could find out more if they want to. In our work, the most important thing, Nick, is the vision. The vision becomes the boss. So if I was working with you, I would say, okay, what is a thrilling, measurable, and maybe even feels impossible picture of the future? We'll set a date. Maybe it's the end of the year. We want to celebrate New Year's Eve, and what does Nick want to be celebrating in his life? Great. And then we're going to do a lot of work around how would Nick potentially get in the way of that picture. And that's a slow, methodical, surgical, but very, very helpful process. And that's where we uncover Nick sometimes wants too much control. Nick sometimes feels alone and he doesn't ask for help. Nick sometimes wants to stay comfortable and he chooses the easy thing instead of the challenging thing. So we get to uncover patterns in people's lives that slow them down from the results that they want. But if the vision is the boss, then we keep reporting to the boss and saying, hey, how do you want me to show up differently today to do my job, to create this picture of the future that I want? So we uncover first all the things that might be getting in the way, and then we have a set of tools to help us not, slap our hands and feel bad about all the different, you're just being a human. Every human's got them. I've got my own stories and my own mindsets that slow me down. But then we have a tool to start choosing a different way of seeing the world and seeing ourselves and seeing our future that creates different options. Now all of a sudden we order off of a different menu, like at a restaurant. We're not ordering off the kids menu, we get to order off of the fancy menu. And we make different choices that then accelerate our progress towards this picture of the future. But the future tells us what problems are worth solving. Because right now, if I was just to talk to you and say like, hey, how do you get in your own way? We could probably talk about 100 problems. But not all of them are equally important. They're not all equally helpful to solve. So let's start with the future, and then that tells us what problems are worth our attention right now. So that's a way to start.
Fantastic. And Joseph, we're coming towards the end of today's show, and I have one question that I really want to ask you as well. So if we're now starting to think about the future, and instead of defending our past, how can we then as a leader make our future limitless?
I think by living in reality, and I'll tell you what I mean. I think if you believe right now that the world is running out of resources for you, if you believe that somebody else's success means that you have to fail, if right now you believe that you need to get permission before you create a breakthrough for yourself, I just want to tell you, and I mean this from love, you are living in a delusion. That is not the real world. The real world that contains all of the resources that you need to accomplish what you envision. The real world contains people who would love to be a part of your vision to help you. The real world is full of opportunities for everybody who wants to grab hold of them. That's the real world. And that's so that's why I love the name of your show, Nick, because you're talking about reality. We truly live in a limitless existence. But sometimes we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah. And thank you very much, Joseph, for reminding me and all the listeners today about that as well. Just finally, was it something I forgot to ask you? Any end note or any final call that you want to leave with the listeners before I let you go?
You know what? I will say one final encouragement to your listeners is, I think that you are capable of wildly more than you're currently experiencing. And one of the best questions you can ask yourself every single day, whether you feel like you're at a high or you're at a low, is asking yourself the question, what are we capable of? And that question will mess you up in the most beautiful way. What are we capable of in every moment of life? So that's what I'll leave them with.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Joseph. If any of the listeners want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, they can find us at the Institute website. So that is MP, like Meta Performance, mp.institute. And you find all the information about our work, whether you want to be a coach or you want to find a coach in our work, mp.institute.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joseph, for coming on the show today to talk about how successful and quietly create limits, but also how to break beyond them and become truly limitless. So thank you so much, Joseph.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much. It's been great.